I stood hidden in a corner of the dimly lit ballroom, observing the couple as they moved gracefully across the dance floor, their gazes locked in each other's eyes. With each sway the woman's breasts rose and fell with them, clinging to the man's broad frame. They were the epitome of elegance in motion, the man moving like an athlete, and the woman following his lead flawlessly. The bond between them was not love, but it was stronger than mere friendship. Her blonde hair fluttered gently with the tide as she clung to him, held close by this handsome man. Normally, I might have envied their relationship, but the woman in his arms was my wife of 11 years, and she was dancing with her boss. We've been to 8 of them over the years and everyone knows she's my wife. I could feel everyone scanning me, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. After 3 dances, they left the venue and joined their colleagues at a table in the center of the room. Our marriage was teetering on the brink of collapse, the kettle of our relationship was about to boil, and I struggled to make sense of the conflicting emotions inside of me. Fear, hatred, and resentment were intertwined with love, respect, and trust for my wife. I even sent flowers to her work, but wondered if she'd received them, and what else could I do but wait? She replied with a grin and raised her glass. By the way, I haven't seen Julian's wife tonight. Is she here yet? Oh, didn't Penny tell you that Julian entertained her with divorce wine today? I jumped at the chance. I didn't think she'd be disappointed. No, probably not, especially on a Friday night. We came straight from work, there was no chance to catch up. I lied in passing. We actually took the afternoon off to get ready. She could have easily brought it up during that time, but she chose not to. As we lingered there, the awkwardness grew, and most of the guests suddenly took a keen interest in the tablecloths or the far corners of the room, avoiding eye contact with me. 00A. Many of the guests had already left the ballroom, but Penny seemed reluctant to leave, even giggling at me for a moment before quickly looking away. B. Many of the guests had already left the ballroom. C. Many of the guests had already left the ballroom. D. Many of the guests had already left the ballroom. E. Many of the guests had already left the ballroom. Many of the guests had already left the ballroom, but Penny seemed reluctant to move on from her conversation with Julian. We should probably go home, honey. I still have to drop off the babysitter. We promised her we wouldn't leave the house after 2 tonight, I interjected, knowing that I was interrupting Penny's conversation with Julian. Yeah, well, I guess it's time to go. I'll see you on Monday, she replied with a smile. With that said, I extended my hand and shook his. He shook it tighter than usual, which was clearly an attempt to assert his dominance. He was slightly taller than me, but I was heavier than him, and I proved it with a small punch. Using a little more force than usual, I locked eyes with him, finding deception and smugness in his gaze. Years old, I paid Sherry and got ready to take her home, coming back to find Penny already asleep in her bed. I looked over at Mia, used the restroom, and then went back to the spare room to sleep. I waved to her as I stopped at the door and asked if she had breakfast. Yes, she waved a spoon in the air and spilled milk on the carpet. 30. I dialed my attorney's cell phone, knowing that he was working from home on Saturday morning. Grant Thomas Gray was here, and I'd greeted him. Good morning, Tom. I don't think it was a cheerful call. His response anticipated the answer. Yes, it was time to initiate the plan. I don't think so yet, but I'll give the SLE a call and make sure that Grant got back to me. I'll meet you at the cafe in half an hour. You can sign and date the form and my assistant will print it out for you. We'll apply first thing Monday morning and have her serve at noon. Sounds good to me. I gave the lovely barista a small smile before finding a comfortable chair by the fireplace and letting my thoughts wander. I never thought I would divorce the love of my life. I was sorting through the mail when I overlooked the ticket. I smiled and knew right away it was a few pennies. She always hit the red light in a hurry. The driver's picture was of Penny, and next to her was the shoulder and arm of a man whose face I couldn't see, but I knew who it was. Not long ago, I looked through my phone and found a text from the 5th. Penny 11:19. Pick up my clothes from the baddie's house after work. I remember thinking that wasn't unusual. The baddie's daughter was a few years older than I was and we got lovely things from them. Tom, don't worry, want me to go and make dinner? Penny, yes, Tom. Penny, what time? 6 o'clock, we can talk for a while. Tom, okay, have fun. Penny, thanks, we will. The woman, I thought about it and looked up the intersection on Google Maps. It's on the other side of town, not the same place the bad guy lives. But still, it could be innocent. From late November I started connecting the dots. Penny was distant all through the holidays. We were arguing about trivialities. We had a lot of fights. And then in January, we had an argument. Arguments, and by January she was avoiding holding my hand while shopping or walking. Our conversation breezed to work, or me and my great-grandfather invested in an undeveloped parcel of land in the Pacific Northwest, which he sold at a profit as the local city grew. After my father's death, I inherited his estate and merged his trust with mine, and with the wealth we had accumulated, the three of us were close to secure, but Penny and I continued to work on increasing our capital in preparation for retirement. There were, of course, clauses regarding the circumstances of my death, and naturally Penny would not get anything if she had anything to do with my death, as I had years of experience as a family lawyer and accounting service. Grant Stewart explained that I really didn't want to wait any longer and that I had lost sleep over it, and I asked him if there were any other options and that he was trying to get started, but very few people believed him. Grant explained that he is a veteran, retired from the military because of a history of complaints and some questionable activity, and that he could start right away, but I don't know if I would recommend a lasting relationship with him, and why do you call him SAS, and I laughed at the question, and that I would like to keep things legal, so that if we do find out something we have a solid foundation, and that if we have to move on, that he's completely legal but all he's found is solid evidence of infidelity. Well, as long as he's legit, we can pay him and get a more reputable leather lawyer in a few weeks. I suggest you, do you think he can start today? I'll give him a call and ask. I'm from your office. I'll let you know later today. Sounds good. Thank you. I don't want to scare her, especially if I'm wrong and this is just a blip in our marriage. I've done so much for her. My goal of being the jealous husband of all her friends has been rejected at every turn, and it's clear we've reached a point of no return. There were photographs, phone recordings, and personal email exchanges, and I both admired and resented the Secret Service, who they all thought lived up to his nickname, and it broke my heart to sit there and say that I never thought she'd have an affair with Julian Morgan, and I guess I could understand why she'd be attracted to Julian, who'd been a star in collegiate baseball, and the only thing that held him back from becoming a professional was a shoulder injury his senior year, and who wouldn't be impressed? I just never thought Penny would let him come between us, and it was all too much to bear. The feeling of loss and emptiness was indescribable. I had just lost my best friend, my confidence, the love of my life and the mother of my children. In that moment I couldn't see any way out, and then up my sleeve he played the recording from the day before explaining why he wanted us to be together. Penny, do you really love me? We'll divorce them, you'll get Mia, we'll have a happy family life. There was a pause in the conversation and I imagined Penny dealing with the bomb her lover had just dropped. You love me, don't you, Penny? Yes, of course I do. I'd never consider leaving Tom. She'd even want to visit him. Why do you hate him so much? What did he do to you? The concern in her voice. He doesn't deserve you, Penny. That loser has no ambition. That loser has no ambition, no drive to do anything. He's just a drone to make other people rich. He hasn't even gotten his master's degree in business administration. He's already served his time, and I can take him down any time I want. Penny, Julian, don't think that you're any better than Tom. He's not. You don't know about him when he was younger. That's why he didn't go to college for a few years after high school, and he's a lot tougher than you think he is. But I'm not in love with him any more than I want to be. But you have taken his place as my man. My love, how is that okay? When do we get divorced at the same time? But she's mentally ill and I haven't spoken to her in a year. That's not a problem. I'll split everything $5,050. She won't have a problem with that, okay? But you have to get Nora's case filed before I see a lawyer. At this point I don't need to hear any more. I look at Grant and say, what am I going to do about this? You make the first move, Tom. But what if she changes her mind? They seldom change their minds, Mr. Gray. I'm afraid they've gotten to the point where nothing you can say or do will make them stop or repent. I think he is really on my side. Even if I pay him, he seems to care for me, and is disgusted with what I have seen and heard from those two. Do you still want her now that you know what you have done? David added. Sounds good, Tom. Can I start the framing of the papers? But I'm wondering if I have another friend if I decide to go that route. All weekend I was so engrossed in my choices that I could hardly concentrate on anything else, and Penny didn't even seem to notice that I was deciding the fate of our family. I worried about Mia and how she was going to get through this next phase. The thought of that arrogant asshole raising my daughter irritated me, and I even flashed back to him walking my daughter down the aisle at her wedding. It wasn't until I was sitting on my back deck Sunday morning with a splitting headache that it dawned on me that no matter how much I struggled, this was probably going to happen. I had lost my wife. I could see the contempt in her eyes. I had lost my family. Monday morning, I called Grant. Tom Gray. Good morning, Tom. What's the decision? I'm suspended. Do you want to sell the house? Yes, we took out a low-interest loan from my trust fund to buy it, so we've been paying for it ourselves, and we'll split whatever equity we get, but I'll recoup the full amount of the loan and the interest we've been paying over the years, and that's a win for me, and as I've explained, I'd like to get primary custody of Mia, and I know it's hard, but maybe David can find some dirt on our son, Julian. Make him look less fit to be a father to a young girl. I want to sue Julian for alienation of love and affection and find a way to bring his wife Nora into the picture, and I want her to know what's going on, in a perfectly legal and honorable way. Speaking of her, please get a separate divorce decree for the adultery and have it ready for her. I'll pay for it. I also need her to sign a contract with me so I can start the paperwork, but there's not much more I can do without her consent or information. I know, Grant, but I've been thinking about this all weekend, and I'm thinking that if I don't leave her with nothing, she might be more willing to take me up on my offer, which she deserves, and she's been working so hard to help keep me from unnecessary losses, and we're both counting on it as our pension. I was thinking that it might give her an advantage over Julian so that she wouldn't have to rely on him so much when she found herself on her own. She deserved more, but I would never give Julian, the liar, any more. I mean, my wife should be enough. I was feeling bubbly as I spoke. Just the thought of Julian taking over the life that was supposed to be mine, even though Penny hadn't returned the favor. I always thought I dealt fairly, and I wanted to make sure I treated Penny fairly, and my solace was that I was sure Maya would later understand how our family had fallen apart, and she would approve of my actions. One last thing, Grant, don't file the papers yet. I want to get everything ready. I want to wait for her to make the first move so I have more time with Mia in our home. I'll work from home Saturday morning, and if something goes wrong over the weekend you can call me. We'll still have to wait until Monday morning to file the paperwork, but I can have someone at the door when it opens and have it delivered the same day. Okay, here's the plan. We said our goodbyes and hung up the phone, and I reached into my pocket and pulled out David's business card and dialed Tom Gray's phone number, and I asked, "How are you doing?" "I'm fine," and he replied, "Are you ready to go and have some fun?" "Well, sort of, but I'd like you to wait for my word." "Okay, no problem, Tom. What are we talking about?" "What are we talking about? Can we meet?" "Okay, give me an hour. I'll be waiting for you at the Duncan Hotel on 6th. Sounds good to me," I replied. "I'm already waiting." As he pulled into the parking lot, he grabbed some coffee and a snack and sat down across from me. "I want you to put together all the nasty documents, photos, video footage you have, and we're going to figure out how to send it to Nora Morgan anonymously, maybe by email." "No problem. I know someone who works on the dark web," David said. "That's it. What about posting videos on a website or sending nasty messages to her parents or coworkers?" "I don't think so. Penny still has to show up in town. I don't want to embarrass her enough to leave town with Mia, and I'm still in love with the dumbass. Even if she doesn't love me anymore, I'm placing an envelope with $5,000 in cash across the table. That should get you started. But if you need more, let me know. I want to catch them off guard. I'll have a reason to give them a head start, and we should find out what his wife's problem is. We should find out what his wife's problem is. We should find out what's wrong with his wife, her medical history." "Did Grant ask you to look into Julian's college years?" "I'm looking for something we can use against them if we ever have a custody battle." After the handshake, we went our separate ways. That was 3 months ago. Grant arrived, as did his assistant and David, and I was pulled back to reality. "I'll take a closer look at it today. We'll find out Monday morning," Davy said. "La la la la." I didn't hear Grant exclaim with his forefinger plugging his ear. "I can't know about this." Davy smiled and nodded. Winking at me, I asked hopefully, "Yes, he and his fraternity are being investigated in connection with drugs." As I signed, Grant's assistant notarized it, and I said to the group, "David, can you find out who Nora Morgan hired as her attorney? If so, we'll find a way to get Nora to contact you, but I'd prefer to handle this properly. David, let's avoid sending her anything too aggressive." David nodded and sipped his coffee while Grant glanced between us. "Grant, can I pick up the paperwork on Monday afternoon?" Grant nodded his understanding and instructed his assistant to prepare for Tuesday's delivery, and then I wanted Julian and company to deliver them on Tuesday afternoon. I think we can cut Nora out of the estrangement soup since she will be notified soon, Grant, and you can give the papers to Nora's attorney on Monday afternoon as long as he doesn't interfere with my discussions with Penny. Grant asked, not so far, is there a problem with her staying at the house for a couple days? No, as long as you don't file a restraining order and she agrees to it. I wouldn't recommend sharing a bed with her. Legally it may not be a problem, but it could be uncomfortable for you. Grant reminded, well, I'll give her a week to find a place. We're not in a relationship yet, and I don't see a problem with that. Oh, you mean actually sleeping in the same bed? Yes, until her lawyers file a motion to overturn this or until we come to an agreement. I mean actually sleeping in the same bed, which might give a weird impression in legal documents. Grant clarified, don't worry, we're not sleeping together right now. Hey David, what did you find out about Nora's medical condition? I smiled at him. I don't think we need to know how you found all this out. David just laughed and shook his head while Grant pretended to be shocked. Grant, does this concern us? We can put it in the final draft as a condition to make sure Mia never gets with her. Grant speaks as he takes notes on his iPad. We chatted a bit more, then each ended our strategy sessions and started our day. They lived on a farm outside of town, where Mia always liked to play with their dogs and help take care of the animals. Sunday night I lay in bed going over my list, reviewing my plans, and eventually drifted off to sleep in the wee hours of the morning. Early Monday morning I called my VP of operations, explaining that I needed the week off, and I reached out to my assistant and senior production manager to brief them on anything they needed to know while I was gone. I stopped by Grant's office and found David there as well. The stacks of paperwork on the desk and the buzz in the office indicated that everyone was busy. Tom, we filed the paperwork at the courthouse this morning. It's Penny's paperwork, which you requested, and we've also arranged for formal service at your house at about 9 a.m. Okay. Grant paused briefly to organize his thoughts and then continued. David found Nora's attorney and he said he would be at your house on Tuesday around 9 a.m. for formal service. Found Nora's attorney, he's very competent. I sent him our papers. He was very enthusiastic at first glance. It looks like he'll be recommending a countersuit for adultery and asking for a larger share of the estate than the 50-50 split. Well, gentlemen, did we miss anything? I ask. I'm feeling a little frustrated. Based on Penny's phone calls and emails today, it looks like she made an appointment to meet with her attorney for next week. Tom, if you need any further help, please let me know. Okay, I will, David, but I think we're okay, I replied. Hopefully I don't need to get deeper and deeper into this mess. It's all up to Penny and Julian. Now I walked out of Grant's office and sent Penny a text message. Penny, will you be coming home tonight at a decent hour? 30. What's wrong? Nothing. I was a little distracted over the weekend and I'm trying to catch up today. I've arranged for Aunt Sally to come over to Em's house tonight for a sleepover. I've brought some home-cooked food. Would you like some? While she was changing I set the table, prepared the food and poured a couple glasses of wine. I sat down at the table and waited for her. When she joined me she picked up her glass and took a long sip, then we started passing the dishes back and forth. She gave me a sidelong glance and asked, No, I thought maybe you'd want to take a week off after our conversation, I replied, keeping my neutrality. Why would I want to do that? I know about Julian and you planning on filing for divorce. She coughed and choked on her wine before giving me a blank look. I could see her mind racing trying to figure out how I knew or what she could do to stall me. What divorce? She finally choked out at last. But it's the one that you're going to be meeting with your lawyer next week and the one that Julian has already filed with Nora. I get it, I know you're in love with him and planning to take me away from me. I opened the package and slid some pictures towards her. Her eyes widened and she put down her glass and picked up the pictures and flipped through them. I could see that her eyes were moist and she was starting to get a little emotional, a sign that she was overly emotional. I know, I've known about your plan for months. I've had time to put it all to rest. I'm very disappointed in you and I'm very hurt. I paused for a moment, gathering my confidence and controlling the anger inside me. Oh God, no, she exclaimed, then briefly locked eyes with me, perhaps out of guilt and shame, and backed away from the table. That's how my relationship with him happened. You didn't do anything to drive me away. You're a good husband and father. I just fell in love with him. He had enough time to warm her heart and get rid of me. I can't do anything now. our marriage is dead, all that's left is the paperwork. I am suggesting that we sell all of our joint property and split it 50/50ths, including the house since I filed first. I'm asking for full custody of Mia and your minimum child support. You will keep your 4,001 premarital investments and your mom's inheritance. I don't want to take anything that belongs to you. We'll split the investments we made together. Mia and I will stay in the house until it's sold. If you stay with Julian as planned, I suggest you print out a document to protect it. I don't want to see you lose anything. I want to make sure that you'll be able to be independent. Since I'm not asking for spousal support, I'm paused for a moment to allow her to absorb what I had just outlined. I think I should have Mia. A girl needs her mother as she matures, she said decisively. I totally agree, but you can do this remotely through visitation and phone calls. I think I have been generous in allowing him to have my wife, but he doesn't get my daughter. I understand that you want to negotiate custody, and I suggest that we let our lawyers handle this and try to be civilized. Penny, I still love you with all my heart. I thought we were going to conquer the world together, but you tore me apart. I don't know what else to do. My world is falling apart. I'm trying to be fair and kind. I really don't want to hurt you the way you have hurt me, but trust me, if you go nuclear or get Julian involved, I will respond, and my dear, I have the resources that both of you will need. She knows I can come on hard if pushed. She's seen it before, so please let's put it on hold and let the lawyers handle it. I want us to be courteous every time we meet. It's important to Mia. She wants us to get along. I intend to get us both deeply involved in our daughters' lives. I pleaded. I really don't want this to turn into a fight. I'm taking the rest of the week off, and according to the law, you have to be formally served. It's scheduled to be served at home at 9:00 a.m. I don't want to embarrass you at work, so you might consider calling in a couple of days off. I know it's going to be a stressful time for both of us at home, but I think we can sit down with Mia tomorrow night, or maybe have her at home on Wednesday, and explain what's going on. I think her behavior is finally having a full effect on her, and she has only herself to blame, and I was oblivious to it until she kicked up this storm, and she looked up at me like a fish out of water, and said, "Well, Tom, you obviously planned it well, and got ahead of us, and I don't know how you did it, but you did. Do you think Sally can keep her tomorrow night too? Maybe keep her out of school tomorrow and bring her home Wednesday morning so we can talk." Penny nodded slightly at my mention of David, then picked up the papers I'd handed her and bid me good night. I watched her walk into the master bedroom and locked the door behind her. I also called Mia on Wednesday morning and told her she didn't have to go to school the next day. She was confused but accepted it. I assured her that and I would explain everything to her on Wednesday, and at 9:00 sharp she opened the door to her room to receive her official papers and packages, except for the photos and report cards, which she must have read in her room last night. Grant advised me to keep a low profile and be cautious, as the server mentioned that Julian had made threats against me. I never thought Julian would act so recklessly because he had gotten what he wanted. However, just in case, I took my .45 ACP 1911 out of the gun safe, made sure it was loaded and ready to go, and then carefully tucked it into the chair next to me as I watched TV. I quickly retreated to the chair with my cell phone in place, ready to dial 911, and felt a sense of security as the door was securely locked. I dialed 911 and told the operator that there was a man in my driveway with a baseball bat and that my wife's boyfriend's unit was out. Julian stormed in angrily and yelled, "You asshole, you got me fired and ruined my divorce settlement." His anger spilled over, but I remained calm. I motioned for Julian to take a few more steps forward, and then I pulled my pistol from the seat cushion. I fired 3 bullets, they hit their mark, and Julian collapsed, never moving again in the chaos. I finally focused on the gun aimed at my face. The officer frantically ordered me to stay still and drop the gun. He ordered me to come to my senses. I obeyed his orders and dropped the weapon. Following his instructions, I lowered myself to the floor. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of confusion and stress. Julian was pronounced dead on the spot. It didn't take long for him to realize that I'd sent him these photos. Penny was right there with him, and when he opened the envelope from his wife, he confirmed that she had the same photos. Penny spotted him through the window of the second-floor conference room, and realizing where he might be headed, she intercepted him in our driveway and tried to calm him down before he could hurt me. Julian pushed her aside as he forced his way into her home, causing her to get a black eye. Thankfully, it was only a physical injury to her, but the mental damage was immense. she had nightmares for months and kept several counselors busy. Within 24 hours she lost her husband, lover and daughter and was never the same again. She insisted on going through with the divorce case. Maybe a month after it was over, she didn't hire an attorney and didn't contest anything, and I easily gained custody of Mia, and surprisingly, she never claimed her share of the financial compensation. I made sure Mia was prepared for each scheduled visit, whether we got confirmation from Penny or not. She only showed up every fourth time. I later learned that Penny had become addicted to painkillers and other prescription narcotics in an attempt to cope and deal with her problems as an adult, and that by the time she disappeared she was out of work, alone, and without a pen. Neither Mia, nor I, nor anyone else she knew had. There was no contact information for Penny. She never contacted us. Again, we don't know what became of her. We lost a wife and a mother. The house was sold. Mia and I bought another house in her school district to try and move on with our lives. We both sought counseling after the traumatic event. I went for 6 months, but eventually had to put the hurt and pain aside and move on with our lives. She understood and respected Mia, and I went through this. We dated slowly. Progress was much slower than we both hoped, but eventually we developed a physical relationship. And after about 16 months we got married, and as a family we raised Mia and Layla's daughter together, but we didn't expand our family any further. Penny, but every lead was a dead end, and the general consensus was that she was probably dying alone somewhere, which was a terrible ordeal, but we did our best and moved forward. I'm so grateful that I had the time to make a plan of action and the right people to support me through it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story, and if you enjoyed it, please consider bookmarking and subscribing, and if you haven't already, please share your thoughts on these events in the comments below.